Hey guys, it's Chelsea from The Financial Diet, and this video is sponsored by United Healthcare. And today I want to talk to you about a few of the realities of growing up that no one prepares you for. And if you're someone who actually happened to have been prepared for these things, good for you, but for most of us, we kind of had to stumble through them on our own, and not having been prepared for them ultimately in many cases led us to either missing out on opportunities or putting ourselves at a disadvantage. But the good news is Mama TFD is here to take care of you, hold you by the hand, and guide you through some of these adult choices. Because growing up is kind of scary, but we all gotta do it, so we might as well prepare ourselves. Number one is getting started with investing. Now, the thing that really kills me about investing, and particularly when it comes to young people in investing, is that there is such a sense of mystery and scariness and confusion around the concept of investing. And ironically, once you get started with investing, it's actually one of the easiest things you'll ever do, and in fact, rewards being lazy. The less you mess with it, the more consistent you are, the more you automate, the less you pay attention to every dip in the market, the better off you are. The thing that is most important ultimately is getting started as early as possible. Because long-term investment involves something called compound interest, starting early is probably the biggest advantage you can give yourself. There's a massive difference between starting your investment portfolio at 20 and 30. The later you start, the fewer chances you get to earn passive income and grow your investments. Imagine you're planning to put away $500 monthly until turning 65. Look at the difference between starting an investment account at 20 compared to starting at 30 if we assume a 7% rate of return. Commencing the investment journey at 20 will accumulate to $1,587,117 by retirement age, while starting at 30 will only earn you $679,567. The cost of not investing young in this case is over $900,000. That's compound interest for you, baby. If we were all being put on a great path, we would all take a class in high school that explains all the concepts we need to know about investing, the market, compound interest, all of the different types of accounts, and we'd all set up our account to start right out of high school and just accrue that sweet, sweet compound interest for the rest of our lives. Unfortunately, most of us don't receive any of this education and tend to think of the whole concept as something that's only really available for rich people, when you can literally get started investing for dollars. And it can be disheartening to say, oh, well, I already missed out on X amount of valuable years, why even start now? But the truth is that every day sooner that you start investing is better off in the long term. Starting at 30 versus 31, 28 versus 29, even 39 versus 40 is a huge difference in the long term. Most of us, unfortunately, were never prepared to tap into the massive benefits of long-term investing. But TFD is here to change that, baby. So we'll link you in the description to a primer by TFD friend and investing expert Amanda that will tell you everything you need to know to get started. Number two is choosing a health insurance plan. Many people in the US don't really think about health insurance coverage until they have to enroll in it themselves, especially when many of us are on our parents' coverage until our mid-20s. So when you take your first look at your employer's insurance packet or start doing your own research for individual enrollment, it can feel really overwhelming. Thankfully, the process doesn't have to be that difficult. Simply setting aside a few dedicated hours to review your different options, balance your needs with your finances, you can easily decide the package that's most appropriate for you and your family. For instance, you'll want to think about the cost of different plans. But remember that the costs associated with health insurance don't just boil down to your monthly premium. Remember to take other costs into consideration like deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, and out-of-pocket maximums. Also keep in mind that many people may save on healthcare costs by selecting in-network care providers and facilities. The best plan for you and your family will depend on your specific circumstances, like your age and current medical conditions.
Click the link in our description for guidance from United Healthcare on common mistakes to avoid when choosing your healthcare plan.
Number three is the cost of being in a wedding. I think in general, the way we understand weddings growing up is like super not realistic or attuned to how weddings actually are in practice. Obviously, since Mama Rona's stopped by for a little visit, weddings have sort of naturally been quite a bit different than they usually are, and for most people, either non-existent or drastically less expensive than they otherwise would have been. But assuming we will eventually return back to a more normal wedding environment, the costs of not just having a wedding, but being in someone else's wedding are something that most of us simply aren't prepared for. Even if you've set aside a special sinking fund for planning your own wedding, it's likely that you don't embark on your 20s thinking, oh, over the course of the next 15 years, I will have to spend tens of thousands of dollars being part of other people's special days. It's worth noting that the cost of being a bridesmaid, like cost of living, varies widely by region. Bridesmaids on the West Coast pay an average of $1,360 per wedding, whereas Midwest maids have it cheapest at $1,100. But even at the low end of that, it's still over $1,000 just to celebrate someone else's day. Typically costs of things like clothing and alterations, accessories, transport, gifts, accommodations, and those ludicrously ballooning and expensive bachelor and bachelorette parties. And social pressure can make it very difficult to say no to or opt out of certain things. For example, if the dress the bride wants everyone to wear costs $300, not even including alterations, and you might not be able to afford that, saying no to wearing the dress could potentially mean saying no to being a bridesmaid generally. And aside from the potential alienation that could represent for the relationship, it's also not necessarily what you want to say no to. This is why it's crucial for people who do choose to have a bridal party to be extremely mindful about the financial constraints that they're imposing on people. I personally opted not to have a bridal party because attending my wedding was already expensive enough, and we had a very small group of people attending, so it also felt weird to select people out of already a very select group. But I knew that just getting to the wedding for many was a substantial expense, and the idea of adding more cost burden to their trip really didn't sit well with me. Ultimately, wedding culture and all of the surrounding parties up to and including the cursed gender reveal culture are a slice of American consumer spending that has continued to balloon with social media and the inherent pressure that it puts on everyone to create a day that is as visually appealing as it is special to experience. But by preparing yourself mentally about what this expense might look for you over the course of a decade, where you may be attending a lot of weddings, you can more easily set what feels like a solid budget for each individual wedding. And having the whole budget laid out will help give you a little confidence in saying no to certain things that simply don't fit in the budget. Number 4 is how much time it takes to keep your house clean. Now, I happen to grow up with a bit of a clean freak mother, so I was always well aware of the emotional and psychological toll that maintaining a relatively neat home will take. And jokes aside, I actually do largely enjoy cleaning. But many people don't, and more importantly, going into adulthood, we often underestimate the various domestic tasks that we must constantly be dedicating time to just to keep our lives running smoothly. It's easy to not factor this time into a schedule, or to let it fall to the bottom of the priority list, therefore leaving you with a ton of anxiety around the acts of cleaning that have inevitably snowballed. And the time is substantial. According to a 2015 report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average person over 15 years old spends the following minutes per day engaging in different household tasks: 13 minutes per day cleaning up the kitchen after meals, 17 minutes per day on laundry, 29 minutes per day on interior cleaning tasks, and 7 minutes per day maintaining the lawn, garden, and houseplants. That is 66 minutes per day dedicated just to cleaning. And when you consider over an hour of time, then 117 by retirement age, while starting at 30 will only earn you $679,000, that can represent a serious chunk of your time. And for most of us, these tasks are not just simply going to go away. In fact, neglecting them is often going to make the eventual task all the harder, while giving us that aforementioned anxiety in the meantime. So the answer is to be intentional with that time. Scheduling time for your domestic tasks the same way you do your professional and personal tasks is the key to making sure that they don't feel like an encroachment on your time, but rather a coherent use of your time like anything else. No one tells you you're going to have to put domestic tasks into your daily agenda, but you should. Number 5 is doing your taxes, particularly with multiple streams of income. I really do find it a bit criminal how little Americans are prepared to do their taxes as adults. Like investing, I think it should be one of the concepts that's taught at school to everyone, so we can all go into these choices with a lot more confidence. And while yes, for those of us who are just simply employed with one stream of income have relatively simple taxes, there still can be a fair amount of variation within that. But for people who have done something like add a stream of income, started their own business, gone freelance, or really anything else that takes you out of the norm of the average American employed taxpayer, doing taxes can be very complicated, and the penalties for not doing them correctly can be quite steep. I once heard a joke that was like, the only thing rich white people go to jail for is not paying their taxes. And that's really true. Unlike all of the other white-collar crime, your ass will actually get thrown in the clink if you don't pay Uncle Sam. Luckily, though, the benefits of outsourcing to a professional, if you have complicated taxes at least once, will often pay for themselves in just one tax year. The first year that I was a freelancer, I was completely overwhelmed when it came time to do my taxes. My tax preparation cost me $350 with a CPA, and in doing so ended up saving me over $3,000 in my estimated tax bill that year, simply by properly doing my taxes and teaching me all about the various deductions that were available to me. My taxes obviously over the years have been extremely complicated as a business owner who also happens to be married to someone who currently doesn't even live in the country. So I've had a professional do my taxes for the past decade nearly. But part of them doing your taxes also is being able to sit down with them and really go through your tax return and understand what you're looking at. So if you're someone who eventually aspires to be able to do your own taxes again, even as a freelance or multiple stream of income person, working with a professional even once can provide you a level of knowledge that you wouldn't have otherwise had. The point is, though, going into your taxes naively or lackadaisically can end up costing you very dearly. So being prepared for it and taking it seriously will save you a lot of headaches. Number 6 is trying to find seemingly innocuous home items. I think most of us in our young adult life at one time or another were taken way by surprise when we realized how expensive certain things are. Like mattresses. A quality mattress can be ludicrously expensive. A large mirror can easily run for thousands of dollars. Solid wood furniture, a decent sectional couch. Even rugs are way more expensive than I think most of us assumed they would be. But the good news is furniture, particularly things like wood furniture, mirrors, metalwork, etc., are one of the best things to never ever buy full price or even new. Places like Nextdoor, Facebook Marketplace, thrift shops, flea markets, all of these are amazing places to buy very high quality furniture at a fraction of the normal price. I think a lot of us automatically opt into the cycle of buying really cheap furniture, often that we end up jettisoning when we move to a different place, or a roommate ends up taking with them, or we just grow out of aesthetically because we bought the absolute cheapest item we could at the time, and every other 22-year-old had the same one. And what's ironic is that for the same cost as that, let's say, completely bottom barrel dining chair that is brutally painful to sit on, you could very likely get a solid wood, high quality, comfortable dining chair for the exact same price if you buy it secondhand. There is obviously a slight level of convenience in having things like furniture brand new and delivered, but then usually you do have to assemble it. The point is, most of us, when we enter our first adult living spaces, go on totally the wrong path when it comes to furnishing our homes. We go for super cheap furniture, most of which is like particle board / MDF, and we cycle through several different items throughout our 20s before eventually finally coughing up a little bit more money for something that will last for years and years. If only someone had warned us. But luckily, if you are at the beginning of your buying furniture journey, you watch TFD and therefore know you should never buy the cheapest stuff that you're going to throw out soon. Just go straight to secondhand. Number 7 is buying or even deciding to buy a house or property. Beyond the cost of doing things like just saving for a down payment, many young people are simply completely unprepared to go through the mental exercise of deciding whether owning a home is right for you, whether it's the right time, understanding the process of getting approved for a mortgage, learning what makes a house worth buying versus not. It can feel like something that we know we're supposed to do and are in many cases heavily pressured into by people like our parents, but feel wholly unprepared for on a logistical level, and not just in financial terms. And that can often lead to serious mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes first-time homebuyers make is buying more than they can afford. To avoid falling into that trap, real estate mogul Barbara Corcoran and other money experts recommend spending no more than about 30% of your take-home pay on housing. Keep in mind that this 30% encompasses more than just the sticker price of the home. It should include all related costs like mortgage interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and any renovations you might want to make. Another popular guideline is the 28-36 rule, which says that you should spend no more than 28% of your gross monthly income on housing costs and no more than 36% on total debt, which includes housing and other debt like student loans or car loans. The biggest mistake that first-time homeowners make is they forget they need closing costs, not just the down payment of, say, 10 or 20%, says Corcoran. Closing costs may vary depending on where you live and the type of loan you choose, but you can expect them to add an additional 2 to 7% of the total cost of the home onto the final price. That means if you're buying something for $250,000, you'll owe anywhere between $5,000 and $17,500 in fees. For the median U.S. home, these expenses exceed $13,000. And $13,000 is not just like a whoopsie, I forgot to bring, $2 to the corner store to get a pack of gum. That can be a make or break amount of money in any kind of long-term financial decision. But the good news about home buying, aside from all the nuance and understanding in terms of determining what home is the right one for you to buy if and when you buy, is that once you've decided to buy and you know what kind of home you're looking for, the rest is simply math. We'll link you guys in the description to a really good calculator to determine whether renting or buying is right for you. You have plenty of things to worry about when it comes to things like locations, school zoning, repairs, outdoor space, neighbors, all of the more nuanced elements of home buying. So give yourself a sense of relief by keeping the math part of it as simple as can be and making sure to overestimate what you'll need in terms of finances so you're never left unable to pay those pesky fees or not having factored them in. Lastly, number 8 is combining finances with your partner. Whether you are married or not, being in a committed relationship with someone, even if you don't live with them, will eventually mean finances having some kind of impact on your relationship. And if you're married or live together, that increases exponentially. Everything from co-signing on something like a mortgage or lease, to sharing bank accounts, to making big financial plans and prioritizing savings together can easily become a serious stumbling block if the couple isn't prepared to deal with finances. Which is why it's no surprise that the leading cause of divorce is financial issues. And I imagine that a huge part of this is because most people are raised to talk about a lot of things with their partner, but not money. And we simply don't have many good cultural models for how to navigate finances in a relationship. For example, many people still think things like prenups are exclusively for rich people, not realizing that with more than half of marriages ending in divorce, it simply means deciding how to deal with your assets and protect yourself before you commit to commingling everything, which is likely something that everyone could benefit from. I must plug on that note the interview we did on the Financial Confessions with divorce lawyer James Sexton. It is very entertaining and informative on the topic. Generally, I think there are 3 good things you must feel that you intimately know about your partner and vice versa before you can even think of commingling finances. Number 1 is your financial values. Amongst financial problems that couples have, one of the biggest is simply different relationships to money and values behind it, i.e. being a spender versus a saver, being someone who prioritizes long-term delayed gratification versus someone who's a bit of an impulse spender. I'm really not here to say that any one set of financial values or priorities versus another is the appropriate one, but you must feel that you understand the values, principles, and ideologies behind how your partner even conceives of money before you can really commingle them. Next is your financial goals. Do you aspire to homeownership? When do you want to retire? Do you want to have children, which is ultimately an extreme expense? How much money do you want saved in the bank? How often do you want a vacation each year? How much money do you think is reasonable to spend on a mortgage? These goals may not always be expressed in financial terms, but ultimately each have a huge financial impact. So it's important to know that your goals, if not perfectly shared, are at least complementary to one another and not at total opposition. Lastly, number 3 is your financial pain points. Do you have serious money shame from growing up in poverty? Do you have financial trauma from a formerly traumatic relationship? Do you have extreme emotional baggage around a heavy debt burden? Have you filed for bankruptcy? Do you have terrible money habits that you're currently working to remedy? Do you even have financial compulsions or addictions? Most of us come to the subject of money with at least some emotional baggage or bad habits that need to be addressed. Feeling that you can be totally vulnerable, honest, and transparent about these things is crucial, particularly before you start commingling finances or enter into something as binding as a marriage. Because an untreated financial issue or baggage will inevitably snowball. And the worst thing you can do is realize that you only found out about someone's enormous financial pain points once you were already entirely commingled with them financially. You may not have been prepared for how to deal with money going into a relationship, but that doesn't mean you can't change your course now and integrate healthy financial communication into the rest of your relationship routine. And no matter how scary some of these elements of adulthood are, remember that each one is just a question of thinking ahead, being honest, facing the stuff that might be a little scary, and making the right choices now to set you up for a solid future. And if you feel like you haven't been doing some of these things perfectly, it's never too late to course correct. And if one of the things you've been putting off doing right is choosing the right healthcare plan for you, don't forget to check out the link in our description and learn more about what United Healthcare has to offer. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to come back every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for new and awesome videos. Goodbye.